Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that your attitude is the key to unlocking every door you've ever wanted to walk through? That the secret to success isn't about luck, talent, or timing. It's about how you show up every single day. Think about it. Your attitude shapes your reality. It determines how you face challenges, how you interact with others, and how you navigate the highs and lows of life. So what if you could train yourself to have a winning attitude no matter what life throws your way? In today's video, I'm going to share 6 simple yet powerful methods that can transform your mindset and set you on the path to unstoppable success. These aren't just tips for motivation. These are habits that will change your outlook, improve your decisions, and ultimately help you achieve everything you've ever dreamed of. Stay with me, because this isn't just about changing your mindset. It's about changing your life. Attitude is everything. It shapes how you show up in the world. It colors how you view your surroundings. It affects how you handle setbacks, how you maintain momentum, how you lead others, how you bounce back, and ultimately, how you live your life. Attitude isn't just a passing mood, it's a muscle. And many people don't even realize they have the power to strengthen it. They assume attitude is something you're either born with or something that rises and falls depending on your circumstances. But that's not how it works. A winning attitude is built layer by layer, day after day. You've seen it before. People with less natural talent, but more determination. People under more pressure, but with greater optimism. People who light up a room not because their life is flawless, but because they've trained themselves to show up with purpose. That's not luck, that's hard work, consistent practice, and intentional mindset. And this is what separates those who grow from those who stall. It's not about intelligence, not about opportunity, not about connections, it's attitude, because attitude shapes behavior, behavior shapes decisions, and decisions shape everything else. You don't need a perfect roadmap. You don't need a motivational speech every morning. What you need is a mindset wired to succeed, one built for challenges, prepared for pressure, and rooted in discipline. Many people don't realize attitude is a habit, but that's exactly what it is. It's a set of beliefs, tones, self-talk, posture, assumptions, and emotional reactions that you rehearse daily, and whatever you practice most becomes your automatic response. So if you wake up thinking small, feeding doubt, and replaying past failures, you don't just have a bad day, you reinforce a bad pattern, and that pattern becomes the story you live by. But when you change that pattern, everything shifts. When you commit to building a mindset that expects growth, searches for opportunity, takes responsibility, and leads with enthusiasm, even when life gives you no reason to smile, you become resilient, you become magnetic, you become strong. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you become tougher. You don't sit around waiting for a good mood, you create one. You don't wait for life to improve, you meet life with a stronger attitude. And then this doesn't mean ignoring pain or pretending everything is okay. A winning attitude isn't fake positivity, it's real perspective. It's strength under control. It's the choice to face reality without surrendering to it. It's about leading with energy that lifts, not energy that drains. It's about remembering that your attitude affects everyone you encounter, your family, your team, your clients, your friends. Your presence shifts the atmosphere wherever you go. The real question is, what kind of energy are you bringing with you? You don't have to be flawless. You don't have to feel amazing every day. But you do need to decide what kind of person you want to be when life gets hard, what kind of mindset you'll carry when things don't go your way, and what kind of voice you'll use when fear starts whispering in your ear again. That decision, that posture, forms the foundation of a winning attitude. And when you build that attitude intentionally, not just in theory, but through consistent practice, you stop being controlled by your environment. You stop simply reacting and start deliberately responding. You stop waiting for better days and start leading. Because now you're not hoping for things to improve. You're showing up as the person who creates better days. The first method to cultivate a winning attitude is mastering your self-talk, because the words you say to yourself are not just sounds echoing in your mind. They are instructions. They shape how you feel, how you act, and what you believe you're capable of. Most people don't even realize how negative their internal language has become. They think they're being realistic or that they're protecting themselves from disappointment. But really, they're rehearsing failure before life has even tested them. The most powerful person in your life is you, and the most influential voice you'll ever hear is your own. So when you speak to yourself with doubt, shame, pessimism, or sarcasm, your brain listens. It takes those words as fact. It begins to build your identity around them. You may think you're being cautious, but in reality, you're becoming limited because the words you use paint the picture your future self will have to live inside. That's why you have to audit your language, the tone, the phrasing, the assumptions you carry. If someone else spoke to you the way you speak to yourself in your lowest moments, would you want them in your life? If the answer is no, then why let that inner voice take the lead? Why allow it to narrate the story of your life? You can't afford to let negativity become your internal soundtrack because attitude follows language. You can't walk in confidence while thinking in defeat. You can't move forward with clarity while speaking in confusion. You cannot win while you're whispering all the reasons you're bound to lose. So you change the pattern. You begin by noticing, not judging, just noticing. You catch yourself saying, I always mess this up, and you pause. You hear the phrase, I'm not good at this, and you question it. You notice when you slip into, this is just how I am, and you challenge it. Not with fake hype, but with stronger truth, with aligned, honest words that reflect who you are becoming, not just who you've been. But this takes effort, it takes repetition, it takes real discipline. But the more you practice, the easier it gets. You begin catching negative patterns more quickly. You start rewiring your brain in the moment. You replace judgment with leadership, shame with strength, pessimism with possibility. You begin speaking with direction, with intention, using words that build rather than break, words that energize rather than drain. You don't have to wait until you feel good to speak powerfully. You speak powerfully so you can begin to feel different. You lead yourself with your language. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to recite mantras. You just need to tell yourself the truth in a way that lifts you, not limits you. You need to decide that the voice inside your head will become your ally, not your enemy. That it will speak with clarity, not confusion. That it will guide with purpose, not pity. When you build this habit, your entire day transforms. You stop fearing challenges. You start talking to yourself like someone who's built for them. You stop shrinking when things get uncomfortable. You start coaching yourself through the discomfort. You stop spiraling in fear. You begin grounding yourself in focus. And over time, that inner voice becomes automatic. It becomes familiar. It becomes your default, not because life suddenly gets easier, but because you've trained your mind to respond differently. You don't need to be flawless. You don't need to win every single day, but you do need to stop allowing your inner language to keep you stuck. So write yourself a better script and repeat it until you believe it, until it feels like it belongs to you, until it sounds like strength. Because the voice you believe the most is the one you hear the most. Make sure that voice is building something you actually want to live inside. The second method to cultivate a winning attitude is shifting from expectation to appreciation. Disappointment doesn't come from what happens. It comes from what you expected to happen. You thought it would be easier. You thought it would happen faster. You thought others would support you. You thought it would work on the first try. And when it didn't, you didn't just feel the setback. You felt robbed. You felt let down. You felt like life failed you. But the truth is, life didn't fail you. Your expectations did. They weren't necessarily wrong, but they were unexamined. They were built on assumption, not on strategy. If you live inside expectation without awareness, your attitude will always be fragile. It will swing up or down based on how closely the world matches the picture in your mind. Appreciation, on the other hand, is steady. It doesn't demand, it recognizes, it amplifies what's working, even when there's still more work to be done. It says, I may not be where I want to be yet, but I'm grateful I'm not where I used to be. It says, I'm not owed anything, but I've been given much. That mindset, that practice, creates energy that lasts. It doesn't just make you feel good, it makes you resilient. A winning attitude is never born from entitlement. It's born from gratitude. The people who survive the hardest seasons, the ones who keep growing, who stay clear and consistent, they've learned how to find something to appreciate no matter what's happening around them. Not because everything is okay, but because they refuse to hand over their power to circumstances. They've trained their minds to focus on progress, not just perfection, to see lessons, not just losses, to see people, not just problems, to wake up every day and search for what's right, not only what's missing. That shift isn't weakness, it's power, because it keeps you in the game even when everything around you is telling you to be bitter, angry, hopeless, or ready to give up. You don't have to ignore pain to practice appreciation. You don't have to pretend everything is perfect. You just have to look for what's good, for what's useful, for what's growing. You have to stop replaying everything that's wrong and start reinforcing what's right, even if it's small, even if it's quiet, even if no one else notices yet. You begin appreciating the chance to show up again, the lesson and the setback, the people who stayed by your side, the small progress you've made, the growth you've seen in your mindset, the discipline you didn't used to have, the simple fact that you're still standing, still trying, still breathing, still building. Gratitude isn't just something you feel, it's something you practice. It's a muscle you strengthen, you write it down, you speak it aloud, you train your eyes to search for it, you train your brain to feed on it, and the more you practice it, the more accessible it becomes, the more natural it feels, the more your attitude becomes rooted in what's true rather than what's lacking. The shift shields you from bitterness, from burnout, from the false story that says, if it's not happening the way I imagined, it's not worth it. Gratitude pulls you out of that trap. It anchors you in what's working. It reminds you why you started. It keeps your heart soft even when the world feels hard. It gives you access to strength without needing things to be perfect, because perfect never comes. Perfect doesn't exist, but presence does, progress does. And when your attitude is built on appreciation instead of expectation, you stop resenting the process and start cooperating with it. You no longer need constant wins to feel worthy. You stop waiting for the world to line up perfectly before you show up with peace and purpose. So you build this habit. You make gratitude your default, not Sunday, not just on holidays, not only when things go smoothly, but every day, consistently, intentionally, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because gratitude isn't just a response to good things, it's a seed that produces them. The third method for cultivating a winning attitude is learning to stop taking things personally. The moment you internalize everything, you surrender your power. You turn every challenge into a personal attack, every delay into a statement about your worth, every disagreement into a rejection of who you are. When that becomes your pattern, your emotional life turns chaotic. Every day becomes a battle to defend your identity from imagined threats. The truth is, most of what happens around you has very little to do with you. People aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are. They're navigating their own struggles, their own fears, their own wounds. And when you begin to see life through that lens, everything softens. You don't stop caring, but you stop collapsing. A winning attitude is built on resilience, not fragility. It doesn't shatter every time someone misunderstands you. It doesn't fall apart when there's no applause. It doesn't waste energy inventing complicated stories about why things went wrong or what someone really meant. It doesn't turn every inconvenience into an identity crisis. What you need is thicker skin, not a colder heart, but a stronger filter, a better internal boundary. So when the world throws criticism, confusion, or chaos your way, you can stay grounded. You can say, that's not mine to carry. You can remind yourself that's about them, not me. You can face a tough moment and say, this is difficult, but it doesn't define me. When you take everything personally, your vision blurs. You react instead of respond. You speak from pain instead of principle. You spiral over things that don't deserve your energy. You create meaning where there was only misunderstanding, and that costs you clarity, peace, and power. But when you learn to zoom out, to pause, breathe, and separate who you are from what's happening, you become more steady. You can hear feedback without folding. You can navigate conflict without combusting. You can handle critique without letting it fracture your self-worth. You stop being so easily offended, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've realized that offense is a choice. Being triggered doesn't mean you have to react. Other people's words only cut deep when they hit an unhealed wound. And when you understand that, you start healing instead of reacting. You stop giving strangers access to your nervous system. You stop letting people who don't truly know you shape your narrative. You stop letting one bad moment spiral into a bad mood, then a bad day, then a bad identity. You stop absorbing what doesn't belong to you. This habit takes self-awareness, humility, and grace. It asks you to stop assuming the worst, to stop expecting attack, to stop projecting your fears onto every encounter. You learn to slow down the story, to ask, is this actually about me? You remind yourself, I don't have to accept every opinion as truth. And when you begin living this way, your attitude becomes bulletproof. You don't crumble every time the wind changes direction. You don't waste hours overanalyzing a comment, an email, or a conversation. You let things move through you. You take what's useful and leave the rest behind. You begin to lead from a calm, steady place. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. It makes you efficient, keeps you focused, and protects your peace, because now your energy is directed toward growth, not defense, toward creativity, not insecurity, toward leadership, not self-preservation. When you begin to train this habit, you pause before you internalize, you breathe before you react, you ask better questions, you remind yourself that you don't have to take things personally just because they hurt. Not everything painful is personal. Sometimes it's just life. And life is not obligated to protect your ego. But you are responsible for protecting your own power. The fourth method to cultivate a winning attitude is to take full ownership of everything within your control and release everything that isn't. And this is where personal power lives. Not in pretending life is perfect, but in refusing to be passive. Not in controlling every detail, but in leading yourself through every storm. Ownership isn't about blame. It's about responsibility, maturity, and agency. Most people go through life on autopilot, reacting to circumstances like a pinball, bouncing from trigger to trigger, waiting for the environment to improve before they feel empowered. But if your attitude is tied to what happens around you, it's fragile. It will rise and fall with your surroundings. That's no way to live. That's a reactive existence, not a life of intention. A winning attitude begins with one belief. I am responsible for me, my energy, my effort, my choices, my reactions, my habits, my momentum. No one else is coming to save me. No one else is coming to manage my focus. No one else is going to rescue me from my own excuses. And that belief shifts everything. You stop pointing fingers. You stop waiting for people to behave differently before you step into who you want to be. You stop outsourcing your emotional state to what others do or don't do. You take the wheel. You lead yourself. You say, I don't get to control everything, but I always get to decide how I show up. This habit forces you to stop being a victim of your story and start becoming the author of it. Because it's easy to blame circumstances for a bad attitude. It's easy to say, this happened to me, or they made me feel this way. But the moment you do that, you hand away your power. You become a bystander in your own life. Ownership is the opposite. It says, this is mine to lead, even when it's hard, even when it's unfair, even when it's painful, especially when it's painful. Because pain without ownership becomes suffering. But pain with ownership becomes growth, it becomes fuel, it becomes wisdom. This habit doesn't mean you control others. It doesn't mean you tolerate abuse. It doesn't mean you carry what's not yours. It means you draw a clear line between what you can influence and what you can't, and you pour your energy into the former. You focus on your discipline, your mindset, your tone, your preparation, your planning, your perspective. You stop trying to micromanage the outcome and start mastering your input. You realize you can't force results, but you can shape the conditions that make them possible. You don't wait for external motivation. You build internal alignment. You don't complain about the conditions, you adapt. You respond, you pivot. You don't let obstacles derail you. You reframe them. You turn them into training. You use them to stretch your capacity. This kind of attitude builds confidence, not fake confidence, not puffed up ego, but grounded, quiet, unshakable confidence. Because when you take ownership, you stop wondering if life is going to work out. You start making it work. You stop asking if you're capable. You start proving it. And over time, that proof compounds. Your wins may be small at first, but they grow. Your consistency builds momentum. Your focus deepens. And eventually, the people around you notice. They see that you're no longer reactive. You're proactive. You're centered. You're intentional. And that presence changes rooms, because a person who owns their choices becomes a person who shapes their future. That's where legacy begins, not in what happens to you, but in how you respond. Not in what others give you, but in what you give to yourself. Ownership is freedom. Ownership is fire. Ownership is the ground zero of a winning attitude. The fifth method to cultivate a winning attitude is to choose discipline over emotion, because the gap between where you are and where you want to be will never be closed by how you feel. It will be closed by what you do. Your ability to do what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel in the moment, is the defining trait of someone who wins consistently. Most people live at the mercy of their emotions. If they feel good, they perform well. If they feel tired, they fall off. If they feel discouraged, they pull back. If they feel unmotivated, they stop showing up. And over time, they begin to build a life that looks exactly like their mood swings. But a winning attitude doesn't come from emotion. It comes from repetition, from structure, from rhythm, from values that override feelings, from actions that align with identity, not passing moods. You can't build anything lasting if you only work when you feel like it. Discipline is what keeps you consistent when your emotions are inconsistent. This doesn't mean you ignore your emotions. It means you don't obey all of them. You lead them, you process them, you feel them, but you don't let them decide what kind of day you're going to have. You don't let them choose your tone, your effort, or your execution. You say, I feel this, but I still act from principle, not from pain. Discipline says, I already decided. That's what makes it so powerful. It removes the daily internal debate. It removes the exhausting back and forth. It removes the question, do I feel like it today? Discipline already answered that. We go anyway. And the more you do that, the easier it becomes, because discipline compounds. It doesn't just build habits. It builds identity. And identity becomes your emotional anchor. When you know who you are, you stop asking your feelings for permission. You start aligning your behavior with the future you're building, not the mood you're in. This is how you gain momentum. Not by waiting for inspiration, but by being dependable. Dependable to yourself, dependable to your vision, dependable to the plan you made when your head was clear. Discipline turns your good days into great ones, and it turns your bad days into average ones. It raises your floor, and that's the key, raising the floor, not just the ceiling. Everyone focuses on the peaks, on the high energy moments, on the big wins. But real greatness is built in your average day. It's not about how high you can go when everything's working. It's about how solid you stay when it's not. Discipline is what makes your average day better than most people's best. And it's trained through the small choices. You wake up when you said you would. You finish the task even though you're tired. You choose the hard thing because it's the right thing. You lead yourself through the dip instead of letting the dip lead you. And every time you do that, you build trust. That self-trust, that's what makes your attitude resilient. You don't need everything to feel right to do what's right. You don't need the perfect setup. You don't need external pressure. You don't need a good mood. You just need the commitment you've already made. Once that commitment becomes a habit, once it becomes part of who you are, your emotions stop having the final word. You learn to feel fear and still act, to feel doubt and still move, to feel discouraged and still follow through. Not because it's easy, but because it's who you've decided to be. So you build this muscle one rep at a time, one morning at a time, one task at a time. As your discipline grows, your life starts to change. You stop needing motivation to move. You stop needing a good day to take action. You stop needing the stars to align to make progress. You just move. The sixth method to cultivate a winning attitude is to surround yourself with people who expect more from you, not less. Your mindset doesn't just come from inside. It's shaped by the energy around you, by the people you allow into your conversations, by the standards they keep, by the language they speak. If you spend enough time around people who normalize mediocrity, you'll start lowering your own standard without even realizing it. Attitude is contagious. Mindset is contagious. Energy is contagious. So if you want to grow, if you want to build something strong and lasting, you have to be ruthless about your circle, about who has access to your thoughts, about who you let speak into your vision, about whose approval you chase, and whose standards you start adopting. Most people aren't bad. They're just not building they're not aiming where you're aiming. They're not running at the same pace. And if you try to carry them with you, if you try to water yourself down so they feel comfortable, if you spend all your time explaining instead of executing, you'll burn out. Not because you're wrong, but because you're not aligned. A winning attitude doesn't just need support. It needs challenge. It needs sharpening. It needs people around you who don't let you off the hook, who won't let you lie to yourself, who aren't impressed by your excuses, who love you enough to correct you, who care about your future more than your feelings. In the moment, this kind of circle doesn't always feel good, but it always produces growth. These are the people who remind you of your standard when you start slipping, who see through your distractions, who call out your patterns, who don't just celebrate your wins. They ask you what's next, not because they're pushing pressure, because they believe in your potential. And it goes both ways. You become this kind of person too. You show up with truth and grace. You encourage, but you don't enable. You support, but you also speak up. You tell your people the truth they need to hear. You raise the temperature in the room, not lower it, to make things easy. You bring clarity when things get cloudy. When you build this kind of environment where growth is normal, where feedback is welcomed, where people talk in vision instead of gossip, your attitude becomes unshakable because you're no longer trying to hold your standard alone. It's supported, it's reinforced, it's mirrored in the lives around you. But if you're the most focused person in your circle is the problem. If you're the only one chasing discipline, the only one talking vision, the only one correcting behavior, you're not in a circle, you're carrying a crowd. And a crowd will drain you, but the right circle will build you. So you start choosing people based on alignment, not just history, based on values, not just proximity, based on who they're becoming, not just who they used to be. You let go of relationships that keep you rooted in an old version of yourself. You open space for the people who will challenge the next version forward. This shift is uncomfortable, but it's essential. You will outgrow people. You will disappoint some. You'll have to walk away from environments where average is enough. But you do it with love, with clarity, with compassion, and with conviction, because you know what's at stake. If you don't, you risk staying where you are. And in doing so, your energy sharpens, your pace increases, your identity stabilizes. You become surrounded by people who believe in your future, who hold you to your word, who challenge your complacency, who speak to your highest self, not just your current state. And that habit of protecting your environment, of curating your conversations, of choosing your circle on purpose is what keeps your attitude from drifting. It reinforces everything else you're building. It makes the hard days easier. It makes the good days more fulfilling. It turns your discipline into culture. You've seen now that a winning attitude is not a gift, it's a choice. Not a feeling, it's a habit. It doesn't come from your circumstances, it comes from your standards. It's not what happens to you that defines your mindset, it's what you decide to do with it. And if you want to live differently, lead differently, perform differently, love differently, then your attitude has to become non-negotiable. Not optional, not seasonal, not mood-based, but foundational, grounded, reliable. And that reliability doesn't show up all at once. It's trained, layered, reinforced. You don't need to master all 6 of these methods overnight, but you do need to start living inside them. You need to start noticing your self-talk and changing it from reaction to leadership. You need to start replacing fragile expectations with resilient appreciation. You need to stop taking things personally and start moving with perspective. You need to own what's yours and release what isn't. You need to lead yourself with discipline when your emotions don't cooperate. And you need to protect your environment like your future depends on it, because it does. All of it matters, all of it compounds, and none of it happens by accident. This isn't about pretending to be positive. This isn't about ignoring real problems. This is about building real strength, quiet strength, the kind that doesn't depend on perfect conditions, the kind that doesn't require applause, the kind that doesn't fade when life gets heavy. Because that's what a winning attitude really is: consistency under pressure, grace under fire, focus in the middle of distraction, leadership when no one is looking. It's making decisions from your values instead of your circumstances. And once you've built that, once you've trained that, once you've chosen that, your entire life moves differently. Your energy shifts, your presence changes, your discipline becomes sharper, your opportunities increase, not because the world gave you something new, but because you became someone new. So now it's yours to carry. No one else can do this work for you, but no one else gets to take the credit for it either. This is your habit, to build your mindset, to shape your standard, to set. And when you live it daily, not occasionally, you stop chasing greatness. Now that you know the 6 methods to cultivate a winning attitude, the real question is, will you apply them? This isn't just about listening to these strategies. It's about making them a part of who you are every single day. Because when you start living with a winning attitude, you'll notice your confidence grow, your energy shift, and your life begin to unfold in ways you never imagined. Remember, success doesn't come from waiting for the right moment. It comes from creating the right mindset, no matter what's happening around you. So if you're ready to take control of your future and build a life of purpose and achievement, it starts right now. Don't just watch this video. Start using these methods today. The world isn't waiting for you to be perfect. It's waiting for you to show up with the right attitude. Let's go.